Hello, Star Trek fans, and welcome to the Rebinge Deep Space Nine podcast. My name is Kim.
And my name is James.
And we're watching Star Trek Deep Space Nine from the beginning, one episode at a time. Welcome back to the podcast. Today we are on Season 3, Episode 6, entitled The Abandoned. This episode aired October 31st, Halloween, 1994.
Okay.
Before we talk about this one, anything to correct from the previous episode, which was Second Skin, I believe?
No, it was perfect.
So should we get started on this one?
I think we should.
I'm putting it off because the opening was disturbing.
No.
In the cold open, my notes say, I'm just going to read you my first sentence from my notes. Okay. It says, we have a very booby opening.
My notes say, #boobs.
There is a Bajoran woman with each boob the size of my head, and they're on full display at the Dabo table. And the guy who is winning a lot has an exposed brain and a pig-like face and is not fun to look at, so it's hard for your eyes to be diverted from the boobs.
I went back and checked, and that alien is the same species as the one from the Cardassians episode.
Yeah, I did the same thing because I thought it was the same guy, but turns out it's a different person, but the same race, yeah. This is the guy who told the fake story about the Bajoran family abusing their Cardassian child.
Exactly.
No, apparently it's a different guy, but he has the same flourish that guy had. Well, anyway, the booby woman has Jake's attention at a nearby table, and he's blowing her a kiss, which I was finding very upsetting to see my sweet, innocent Jake doing this. Because in my mind, he's still like 14.
Yeah.
So I actually had to go back and figure out how old Jake was, because I'm like, is he 14? Is he 15? So he was 15 at the beginning of last season. Yeah. So I guess he's 16 now.
That is correct.
But regardless of if he's 15 or 16, this just felt really grotesque. It's almost hard to describe.
This is the writers indulging in their teenage male fantasy.
Yeah, I have some notes about that later.
Oh, okay.
But according to IMDb, the actors were only born a few years apart. So realistically, these two actors are almost the same age, although age is very different when you are quite young. The difference between 18 and 20 is very different from the difference between 30 and 32. Anyway, so they're supposedly only a couple years apart. This actress, her name is Jill Sayer. She doesn't have a lot of acting credits, and I think we can guess that that's not what they were going for here. They weren't going for her acting credits, which really adds to my irritation with this whole nonsense in this episode.
I'm thinking maybe the idea was that the age difference shouldn't have been so great between the two of them. Like, she was supposed to be maybe 18.
Yeah.
But somebody said, yeah, that's a little bit too young.
Maybe, because, yeah, then they would have, if she were 18 on the show, she would have only been 2 years different from Jake, which is more like what they were in real life. But, then later they say that she's 20.
Right.
So in reality, although she's 20 in Bajoran years.
Yes.
Which is longer than Earth years. So she would be older.
Yeah, we better check. We'll get letters if we get it wrong.
Yeah. Well, anyway, enough of the boobs for now. I'm sure they'll come back out. Quark is annoyed at all the Dabo winning that's going on at that table as he watches from the upper level. The brain guy tries to leave with his winnings, but the booby woman convinces him to keep playing. This makes Quark happy because this time he loses. Then the brain guy tries to hit on the booby Dabo woman, but she brushes him off to go and sit with Jake. And this is where that sort of childlike vision of Jake sitting with this not childlike woman, it was very disturbing.
Teenage male fantasy.
She tells Jake that his dad came by and invited her to dinner tomorrow night and said it was Jake's idea. And Jake looks shocked, but he does remember mentioning it to his dad before.
Yeah, he did.
In fact, I think we talked about it, in one of the previous episodes. Then elsewhere in the bar, someone we haven't seen since Season 2, Episode 1 appears. This is the purple-haired woman who is a Boslik freighter captain who gave Quark Lee Nollis's earring.
Yep.
Anyway, she appears and she tells Quark that she has the salvage from a ship that crashed in the Gamma Quadrant. And she says he can have it all for only 3 bars of latinum. Quark is surprised she's still going to the Gamma Quadrant because everybody else seems to be afraid to do so. But he doesn't appear terribly interested in this deal until she blows in his ear. Overall, the whole scene is pretty smarmy, which is how it was the first time we saw her with him as well.
And it also goes to prove Quark is such a terrible businessman. He can so easily be manipulated.
Somebody blows in his ear and he goes, oh, yeah, I guess I will buy that salvage.
She pretty much did the same thing with the earring.
Did she? Yeah. Yeah, she manipulated him, which is I don't know, the way men write women, but okay. Well, next we see Quark entering what I think is a cargo bay, and it's dark. He has a flashlight, and he's poking around the wreckage that he just purchased. He's surprised by the haul that he got for only 3 bars, until he hears what sounds like a baby crying within the wreckage. He opens a black container, which is sort of steaming, and he finds the source of the crying. We don't get to see what he sees, we just hear it, and he says, "No!" And we cue the theme song.
Do you think she knew there was a baby in there and palmed it off on Quark?
I do.
Yeah.
I didn't at first, but then later when Dax says that they can't track her, she's like disappeared. I was like, she was trying to get rid of it.
I figured that she'd picked up all this junk, found the baby, and palmed it all off on Quark.
Yep.
Knowing what an easy mark he is.
I did briefly wonder here if we were in for a quirky episode of Quark playing an unwilling dad. It would have sort of fit with the almost goofy opening with the booby woman and all. That would have fit if this was sort of a silly episode.
Yeah, I would have just fast forward to the end of that episode.
Well, then we go to medical, where Sisko is yelling at Quark for buying a child.
Oh, a very grumpy Sisko.
Yeah, but Quark maintains it was an accident.
The way he says, "You bought a child?"
Yeah, it was pretty funny. Dax comes in saying she's unable to track the Bosslik freighter. Bashir says the baby seems healthy, but he doesn't know what species it is yet. It appears to have an incredibly fast metabolic rate, and he assumes that's natural for his species, but he doesn't really know.
I will ask the question of why Sisko would necessarily be surprised that Quark bought a child.
Yeah.
We know Ferengi have absolutely no moral compass, so sentient life form trafficking probably would be within their allowed business practices.
It seems like when Quark or anyone does something that just means Sisko has to deal with it, that's when he gets annoyed. They seem to just let Quark do whatever he wants otherwise, and they just kind of ignore it.
Yeah.
But this is something now that he's going to have to deal with. And then I think he's like, ugh, Quark, why?
He really is such a bad businessman. You know,
yeah, he's terrible.
If he hadn't let Pell go, he would have owned a moon by now.
Well, you might as well let go of Pell. I don't think we see Pell again. Well, Dax says O'Brien is analyzing the wreckage of the ship. Quark starts to complain that he paid good money for that ship, but when Sisko gives him a withering look, Quark just says, "It's yours now. Enjoy," and he runs away.
That look also was just perfect. It was a, which airlock do you want to fall out of look?
Well, we finally see the child because Sisko picks him up and starts cooing at him. He looks kind of human except for a scaly thing on his forehead.
Yeah.
I'm guessing there was only so much makeup they could legally put on a baby.
Oh, that's true.
Yeah. Dax suggests contacting an orphanage on Bajor, but Sisko is distracted by the cuteness of the baby and his little onesie. But then he hands the baby back to Bashir and asks to be kept informed. He walks out into the promenade with Dax, and Dax tells him that he's glowing from his time with the baby. And Sisko says he misses taking care of Jake when he was just a baby. He misses being able to make Jake happy just by lifting him over his head.
It is funny how Dax, who has admitted how she was a terrible mother and a terrible father,
Right.
is kind of poking fun at how much Sisko really did seem to enjoy fatherhood.
Yeah, he really was happy to see that baby. It was very cute.
Yeah.
But also a big part of the story is we're supposed to link the innocence of this child, at least for now, to the other story of Jake growing up.
Oh, yes.
Now we go to Sisko's quarters, and Jake is lounging on the couch when his dad comes in and tries to hug him because he's all happy from seeing the baby.
Cranky teenager.
Yeah, Jake is annoyed that his dad didn't tell him he was inviting Marda, that's the Dabo woman, to dinner. And he says he did tell him weeks ago that if Jake didn't do it, he was going to do it. And Jake just sort of sighs. He's definitely uneasy about this dinner, but we don't really know why.
Yeah.
I was wondering if maybe he was worried that his dad was also going to be mesmerized by the intense boobs.
He was worried Marta might come to dinner wearing red.
Oh. You know what? She did look a little like the woman from Second Sight.
Yeah.
A younger version. Not a lot younger. 4 or 5 years younger. Not much. Yeah, maybe Jake was worried that his dad was going to pick up his girlfriend, which would have probably been more appropriate. Well, now we go back to medical and we find that the baby is no longer a baby, and it's now looking maybe 9 or 10 years older.
Yeah.
And Bashir says creatures that grow this quickly are usually physiologically simple, but not this kid. Weirdly, the kid can also speak already and says he needs food. He also asks where he is. Sisko tells him he's on a space station, which the kid doesn't know what it is, but says he wants to learn. Then they discuss whether these language skills and his cognitive abilities are natural to his species, or some intelligence implanted into his genetic structure.
Yeah, Bashir seems very surprised by all of this.
Yeah, he says that the kid appears to be the product of some very advanced genetic engineering.
Yeah.
Why aren't we worried about a virus? Now we have genetically engineered kids technically, I suppose we could be worried about that all the time, which would make it very boring on Star Trek if we were so worried about a virus who never did anything. So maybe it's just that now I'm always worried about a virus.
Well, and worse, biogenic weapons. We've already seen that in the episode Armageddon Games. So genetically engineered, tailored bioweapons.
We're just not cautious enough, I think, especially on this show where we're just, beaming stuff right into ops. I mean, we did it on the Enterprise too, but just didn't seem as frequent.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, Sisko tells Bashir to keep testing the kid's mental abilities. Maybe he'll eventually evolve to the point of being able to tell us who he is and where he came from.
It's kind of fascinating to see how quickly he developed language skills. There must be an awful lot programmed in there.
Back in the cargo area, Miles is showing Sisko where Quark found the kid, and it seems to be a stasis chamber that was damaged in the crash. The wreckage appears to be from some kind of freighter or transport vessel, but they haven't really learned much else. Sisko then tells Miles that the replicator in his quarters are on the blink again, and he needs them fixed before the big dinner with Marta. Sisko says Quark calls her a Dabo girl, but she's 20 years old and Jake is 16, so this relationship has to stop. See?
Yes.
Somebody is finally thinking logically. Miles asks why he invited her over then, and Sisko says curiosity. He wants to see what he's up against. Boobs, man. That's what you're up against. Really, really big boobs. Miles asks what he'll do if he ends up liking her, and Sisko says he doesn't want to like her, which Miles finds very cute.
She's a Dabo girl. She's dating my son. I don't want to like her.
Right.
That was funny.
She's also 25% older than Jake.
This is why I think maybe the original intention was to write a character who was much closer to Jake's age. Well, 18.
Maybe.
Perhaps the network went, make her older.
Yeah, something about it just flat out didn't work.
Well, Miles does correctly sum up the teenage boy fantasy aspect of this.
When he says Godspeed at the end. Yeah.
Exactly.
Now we go to Kira, and she's carrying a large plant, which honestly looks dead or plastic. I don't know.
Plastic.
Anyway, it's a housewarming gift for Odo, who now has his own quarters. And Odo opens the door, and she tries to peer in, but he tries to avoid letting her in, but eventually sighs and lets her in. Yeah, it was cute.
Oh, I laughed at that when he opened the door, came out, and then immediately closes it.
Yep. It's like a teenager trying to hide something in their room.
It's like Odo doesn't want people to know anything about him.
Well, he's never had privacy before.
Yeah.
So he's trying to take advantage of it.
That's true, yeah.
Well, inside she finds a bunch of different structures and decorations, and he says he wants to use the room to explore what it's like to be a shapeshifter. He tells her he doesn't even use his bucket anymore because he can revert to his gelatinous shape anywhere in the room, and also now he can become any shape in private, which makes Kira feel like maybe she's intruded.
Yeah.
Yes, you have. But Odo says she's always welcome. He puts the plant into his old bucket, which makes her very happy.
It's a short scene, but there's a lot to digest in this.
Yep.
First of all, Odo seems to very much have embraced modern art as the aesthetic for his quarters.
Well, I think he was just picking things with interesting shapes. I don't know that he was necessarily appreciating the art. This is maybe the best scene of the entire episode. It's very short, but we learn here that everyone is curious about Odo's quarters because they're all wondering what Odo needs in his quarters because he's always only ever had a bucket in his office. But we also in this scene see Kira recognize that curiosity is making him uncomfortable. And they're really terrible at picking up his cues. So it's good to see somebody recognize that and actually ask, is this okay? And for him to say that, she's always welcome there is just another sign of his affection for her.
Yes.
This is a really good scene. Yes. Buried in this episode.
He spent all his early life being a showcase in a lab. So having this privacy for the first time, real privacy, I can understand why he doesn't want anyone to see it. But at the same time, I can also appreciate the curiosity of what does a shapeshifter keep in their quarters.
Yeah. He had such distaste for being a science experiment and people just looking at him all the time that this opportunity for him to close a door, I think is really meaningful to him. Yeah. Even in security, that door is see-through.
That's true.
Yep.
Oh, I didn't think of that point. But I do like as well how Kira recognizes that this is something special for Odo.
Right.
And then the use of the bucket for the flowers.
Yeah.
This is, I think, showing a really important change for Odo. There's sort of a level of self-confidence here. Meeting his people seems to have changed him. He doesn't feel so desperate for connection, as it were. And the whole thing with the bucket and using it for the flowers, it seems very symbolic. This is my past. The quarters are now my future.
Right. I think it's very meaningful that he sort of found himself and then he got quarters right after that.
Yeah.
I don't know if they ever cover how this happened. Like, did he ask for quarters? Like, you could treat me a little better, give me my own spot. Or did somebody say, hey, maybe if we treated Odo more like he was a member of the crew, he would feel more like a member of the crew, which is, what a leader should do. But I don't think we learn.
I don't think we do. I think he's seen his shape-shifting as almost an embarrassment. And after meeting the founders, for good or bad, he's realized that it's a gift.
Right.
And he's finally embracing it.
I wonder, too, if, because he was so different, if he was feeling sort of lesser.
Yeah.
And then he met his people and he found that, in fact, they were such racists and really doing some awful things. He could now recognize himself as something maybe a little more evolved than that.
Oh.
And so that may have helped lift him a bit, as he was probably feeling, because he was separated from his people, he was lesser than them. But then once he reunited with them and realized that, they have cut themselves off so much that they've almost devolved.
Yeah.
And now I have this better way of looking at things, or at least more open.
Ooh, yeah.
That too would probably help boost his confidence a little.
Oh, that's a good point.
It's so funny to me, though, because I feel like Odo is probably the most emotional of all the characters.
Yeah.
And yet they've treated him up until this point as if he is the least emotional. Like, Odo doesn't care. We can call him Constable and he can live in a bucket in his office. And do you know what I mean?
Yes. There's been sort of an uncaring attitude about Odo.
It's almost like I've worked with people who run the gamut of, how emotional they are.
Yeah.
And I'm certain there have been times where I've worked with men who are really, really emotional. And they struggled because they were trying to hide that from other people because it didn't seem right, or because other people told them it wasn't right for them to be emotional because they're guys. And it's kind of sad. I worked with this one particular individual who he just struggled all the time with it. He would overreact a lot of times to things, and it was because he just struggled with those emotions and he didn't know how to deal with that in a work environment.
Right.
I feel like that's a little bit like Odo, where the others around him just weren't recognizing that the guy's just got emotions. It's okay.
Mm-hmm.
But you have to adapt to your teammates. That's how it's supposed to work. You don't tell them that they're wrong constantly.
No, unhelpful.
Well, we are almost 20 minutes into this episode, and I was concerned that nothing really had happened. And I thought, wow, this is a strange episode where we're still kind of lacking what that big plot point is.
Right.
And then we finally, in this next scene, something finally started to happen as we learn a little bit more about the kid.
It was a really oddly paced episode.
It really was. I agree. So now we're in the Replimat, and Julian is telling Dax that the boy's DNA structure has definitely been altered, but he doesn't know if he's a unique experiment or a normal product of his species. That's still sort of a mystery to him.
Yeah.
Julian has figured out that his system requires large quantities of a certain enzyme, which he'll try to replicate. He can't figure out why anyone would genetically engineer someone with such an obvious flaw, which it's funny because that's very obvious why you would do that, because it's control. But then the nurse calls Julian to come to the infirmary urgently. And now we get the strange perspective of someone who's come out of the infirmary, and we're getting the view from their eyes, so we can't actually see the person.
Yeah.
And everyone is freaking out on the promenade. And when Julian approaches and tries to say everything's going to be okay, he gets punched in the face by this figure that we can't see yet. But then the kid, who is now quite tall, runs off, and we see him from the back, punching people as he goes. And Dax calls for security, which brings Odo onto the promenade. And the kid lunges at Odo, but Odo turns to goo, and the kid flies right through him. And then we see the kid from the front, and he's in awe of Odo because it's a young Jem'Hadar.
Yes.
And he does a sort of reverent bow to Odo, who he must recognize as a founder.
Right.
And Dax calls Sisko, saying, the mystery of the kid is solved.
He's a Jem'Hadar.
Yep.
Or a baby Hadar. I don't know what you call the young ones.
A baby Hadar. He's not yet a gem. He's just a baby. He's a gemlet.
Gemlet Hadar. There you go.
Now we're in a conference room, and Sisko is telling the team that the kid is going to be sent to Starbase 201, where he'll be handed over to a team of specialists. This sounds a little too familiar to Odo, who doesn't seem pleased with the development.
Oh, yeah. The way he says, a well-treated specimen. Odo does not like that.
No.
This must really resonate with him, having the experience of being a lab rat.
Definitely.
And then standing there while they're saying, oh, we're going to ship him off to become a lab rat.
Especially when Kira is so happy to get rid of the kid. She's like, great. Can he go now? Yeah, exactly.
Should I get him a card?
Well, Odo, of course, figures they're going to study him like a laboratory specimen, just like he was studied. Bashir agrees with Odo. He's a sentient being, not a lab experiment.
I also thought that was important, that Bashir takes this moral stand of he's sentient. You can't treat him like just some kind of engineering experiment.
Right. Well, Dax points out that the founders may have removed the kid's ability to have free will, and he may be nothing more than a genetically programmed killing machine, which is a very good point. Odo requests the right to get to know the kid and learn about him. He says he'll be responsible for him while he's on the station. He feels an obligation to undo some of the damage caused by his people. He also knows what it's like to be a specimen in a laboratory. He just wants a chance to find out if he can help the kid become something besides the killing machine. And Sisko agrees to give him some time with the kid, but warns him to be careful.
This whole thing seemed to irritate Odo from both the aspect of the genetic manipulation and him being considered a prized specimen.
Yeah.
I thought I felt he was more worried about Odo than the general security.
Oh, I thought so too, yeah.
It felt like he was saying to Odo, don't get yourself killed or hurt.
Yeah.
And what I thought was interesting as well was Sisko caring about someone who was effectively a representative of the founders.
I wonder, though, too, if all of them, or maybe just Sisko, but if they're thinking that this is a very powerful creature and currently he's on our side, but maybe we should keep him closer to us.
Yeah.
Rather than being fearful and trying to get him out. It's like keeping your enemies close. Not exactly. I'm not saying they're viewing him as an enemy, but I imagine that they're watching him with some trepidation at this point.
Yeah.
Which maybe they were before, too, because they didn't know what he was. Now that they know what he is, it's maybe a little bit worse.
Yes. Sisko already in the episode, The Alternate, was pretty much went straight to, we just kill Odo if we have to.
Yeah, that was weird.
So that's a good point. He could be placating Odo to keep him under observation, as it were. Wow, that's dark.
Well, it's funny that they want to study this kid, but they don't want to study Odo anymore.
Yeah.
Or I guess they recognize that it's Odo's decision and they can't study him anymore.
Yes.
It's never really cut and dried the way things work on TV shows.
Depends on what the writing requires.
Yeah, it depends on what's needed in the story. Well, we go to security now, and the kid is in a cell, and he keeps running at Bashir, hitting the force field and then falling down. He's like a total moron at this point. Bashir just wants to help him, but the kid just keeps telling him to leave him alone. Then Odo comes in, and he immediately calms down. Odo asks how he is, and he lists off a bunch of symptoms that he's having, and Bashir says it's because he's addicted to this enzyme that he hasn't been able to get quite right. He says he needs to do more tests, but the kid is resistant. So Odo convinces him to let Bashir do his tests.
He looks like a full-on Jem'Hadar now.
Yeah, just a little bit thin. Because he's a very skinny kid.
Yeah. I didn't actually look up how old the actor was, but he looks pretty young.
Yeah, looking up the actor who played him, it looks like he was around 20, but he does look pretty young.
Yeah.
Then Odo asks the kid what he really wants, and the kid says he wants to fight. And Odo asks why, but he says he doesn't know. Then Odo tries to get him to relax and to smile, which was hilarious because the kid actually has a weirder, creepier smile than Odo, and that is saying something.
Yeah, that came out pretty funny and creepy.
Yes.
This is another shout out to the makeup, though. Yeah. Wow, it looks so seamless.
Yeah, his makeup is really good.
Did you notice? I think they were messing with Odo as well.
I think they continually tweak Odo, continuously evolving.
Yeah, right.
Well, it's finally time for the dinner party, and Marta is holding Jake's hand when Sisko comes in with shrimp creole with mandalay sauce.
Oh, that sounds so good.
He serves up the food while asking Marta to talk about her family.
She's wearing a much more subdued outfit now, though.
Yeah, definitely.
And it's purple.
Looks blue on my TV.
You need to adjust the color settings on your TV.
Yeah, maybe. Well, her parents were killed during the occupation, and she's been on her own for a very long time. She says she has siblings, but they stopped talking to her when they learned she had a job as a Daba woman. She says it's amazing that people will judge you just based on your job, which makes Jake do a dramatic look at Sisko. So stupid.
Oh, that was great. Yes.
It was like, see?
That was like a total stage play comedic look to the right. Very funny.
Yeah, it was very hilarious. Well, then Jake says Marta is a writer, and she says Jake writes poetry and is a hustler at some game that's like pool or snooker.
Damjat.
Called Damjat. And this is all blowing Sisko's mind. And then she tells him that Jake just seemed like another teenage boy at first, but there's more to him than that.
Come on, Sisko, you missed an awesome chance to ask. So, you date a lot of teenage boys?
Yeah. Why didn't you hook up with Nog?
I think the character was written to be younger. I did like it when Sisko said, "Tell me more about my poet hustler son."
I'm going to talk more about that later. Back in the cargo bay, Miles has found a damaged suitcase that seems to contain the enzyme the kid needs. Miles asks the same question about why you would genetically engineer someone to be addicted to a drug, and Odo says he's sure it's a way for the Jem'Hadar to be loyal to the Founders. Finally, somebody's thinking.
Yes.
If your soldiers are addicted to something only you can supply, you have a lot of control. Miles says that's very cold-blooded, and Odo reminds him his people don't have blood.
Oh, come on, Odo.
Which makes Miles do a kind of awkward, oh yeah.
Come on, Odo. You know what the context was behind that statement.
Yeah, that was a little weak.
How about just saying, your people are just cruel, Odo?
Yeah, he could say, I was trying to be nice. Your people are just awful. Back in the infirmary, Dr. Bashir has figured out how to administer the drug, but he has no idea what the dosage should be, so he has to experiment. But it seems to work pretty quickly. Then when Odo tries to leave him in medical, the kid really wants to go with him. He takes him in as a house guest.
And when Bashir figures out how to get the drug into the kid's system and he recovers and starts feeling better, the way he turns to Odo and says, thank you.
Yeah, even though Bashir was doing it.
Ungrateful little brat.
There's a theme.
Yeah, I'm officially an old person saying that.
Well, now we go to Odo's quarters, and the kid is asking a bunch of questions about Odo's abilities.
Oh, it's his first house guest.
He doesn't understand why he wants to look like a humanoid when he's better than they are. Odo says he's different than them, not better. The kid knows in his heart that he's inferior to Odo and that everyone else is inferior to him, which is scary.
Oh, the Founders are just such great people, aren't they?
Oh, it's awful. No, Odo says, that may be what your instincts tell you, but we're all equal. This confuses the kid because he knows that Odo can't be wrong. Odo tries to convince him he needs to make decisions on his own. He says he wants to learn about his people and where he comes from. This is all very Hugh of Borg.
Oh.
Don't you think? This is what that really reminded me of.
Yeah. Oh, I didn't really think about that.
Well, then he shows the kid. The only way I can describe this is that he pulled up the episode called the Jem'Hadar and he showed it on the screen.
Ah.
Anyway, he showed when some of his people attacked the bridge crew on the Defiant, which is a scene straight out of that episode.
Yeah.
Odo tells him his people are a race of brutal warriors and says he doesn't have to be the same. He can channel his aggression in other ways, and the kid wants to know how.
I can see what Odo was trying at here. When he warned the kid of you might not like what you see, it may have had the opposite effect.
Yeah, it might have helped bring that violent side of him out.
Yeah.
As he sees what his other people are like.
The other thing I think is important in this scene is that Odo may be missing the point. That this kid's been genetically programmed to think this way. And Odo's kind of giving him the benefit of the doubt.
Well, he's really hoping that the kid has freedom to make his own decisions.
Yeah.
And he's still pretty convinced that he does. But we've seen no evidence yet that the kid has the ability to do anything but what the Founders want him to do. And that he has any other ability to, like, feel emotions or be empathetic. All he knows how to do is be angry and fight. And we haven't seen anything else yet. And I think Odo is just assuming he can draw more humanity out of him.
Right.
But I think everybody else is trying to tell him it might not even be there. It's not a choice.
Mm-hmm.
And I think Odo just wants to give him the choice.
Yeah. I think you're right. Another thing we're seeing here is we've talked about Odo's personal code and what his sense of right. This scene is really important because that actually comes out completely here. He talks about how they're all equal and no one is better than anyone else. I think that's basically telling us that's what Odo's belief system is. That's his personal code.
Yeah, I can't remember exactly what we said before, but Odo always feels like justice is on his side.
Yeah.
But it's really just Odo justice. It's nice to hear him say something that actually is a little bit of a broader view of things, where he's talking about, hey, I'm not better, you're not better.
Right.
We're all equal. Because we haven't necessarily seen that from him. So it's nice to hear the words. I think he's evolved a fair amount over the last couple of episodes, a handful of episodes, I would say.
It also means that Odo is different from the rest of the Founders. I think this goes back to your observation that the Founders all share the same memories and thoughts. And you would end up with kind of a block of them all thinking and acting the same way, or all believing the same kind of things. And because Odo was separated from that, he's been able to find his own moral code and has ended up in this situation of having a belief system in which people are equal. And you're seeing completely the opposite with the Founders of they're superior to everyone. It's like the founders have this god complex that's just reinforced by the Great Link.
Oh, they definitely have a god complex. But I wonder, too, if what they're trying to tell us here with these characters in this story.
Yeah.
But if you are raised in a particular way by a particular set of people and you get no exposure to anything else, is that really free will? Or, are you just thinking the way that everybody else around you thinks? I might just be drawing on my own self. I don't know. It's kind of like when you're a kid
right.
growing up and you go off to college and you meet all different people from around the world.
Yeah.
And suddenly your eyes are opened that the thing that you thought was everything isn't everything. It's a little different now because the world is more cosmopolitan and more available to you wherever you are.
Uh-huh.
But like when I was growing up, in small town America, it wasn't. I didn't have access to everything that was going on out in the world. I had access to what was right in front of me. And then I went off to college and it was like, oh, hey, everything I thought, is not right. It's not the same. And I was then able to establish kind of my own opinions and my own ideas of things. And I'm not saying it's better or worse, right? It could have been worse. I could have ended up, in a much worse situation. But at the very least, what I'm trying to say is sometimes your eyes are opened to other possibilities once you get out of your small town and out of your house.
And that, I think, is Odo's story.
That is Odo's story.
And it's made him stronger than the actual founders.
I agree.
He's not frightened of the other people.
He's not frightened of the other people. I totally agree with that, yes.
And I think this is coming out with his willingness to try and help this kid. I don't think the founders would take that approach.
No.
But because of his experiences, he's doing that.
I don't know how the Great Link works yet. We've only had one episode where they talked about it. But he joined with that main founder woman. Do his experiences now go into the Link? I think she said no, right? That he should come back and join the Link.
Yeah.
Because I'm just wondering, has he somehow impacted them? But I guess we'll find out.
I'm going to assume that they would want to keep Odo out of the Link because maybe some of his ideas are a little bit radical.
Yeah, maybe. Oh, that's interesting. Well, Odo takes the kid to a holosuite and runs program Odo 1, which is hilarious. He's always only ever got one program. It's always Odo 1.
I'd like to point out here that Odo 1 is actually the program that purged the psychic things from dramatic personing.
Yes. Yes, exactly.
I went back and checked.
But remember, he doesn't like to save things because he thinks it's a waste to save anything. So I assume he deleted that. He used it once and then he deleted it. And now he's created a new program and he's called it Odo 1. Although he's on a different system. That was Odo 1 in the cargo bay. This is Odo 1 in the holosuite. So maybe they're just disparate systems. But still, I just thought it was hilarious that his program was Odo 1 for the second time. He's very uncomplicated.
Yeah, he is.
Well, anyway, he creates an alien and says he can be as strong as the kid wants and any level of agility or speed. In here, he can indulge himself in his fighting, but outside he has to learn to live peacefully and contain his feelings of aggression and violence. So the kid starts fighting with the hologram and he keeps asking for its level to be increased.
Oh, he beats it up. No problem.
Very quickly. Kira enters asking to speak to Odo. And then while Odo is out of the room, the kid increases the difficulty level again.
And is still beating the crap out of it.
Yeah.
When Kira comes in and looks at what's going on, that was a great WTF look.
Well, she's irked that Odo has let the kid move in with him, but Odo feels like he's developing a real connection. She wonders how long he'll be able to control him, which Odo finds irritating. He's not trying to control him. He's just trying to show him that he has choices. I think that's the key to everything. Because he felt like he didn't have choices, and he wants this kid to feel like he does.
Yes.
But the problem is the kid doesn't have the ability to make choices. That's the problem.
Well, Odo's heart is completely in the right place here.
Yes.
I think you're quite right. That is exactly where he's coming from. And also, Kira's view is probably skewed here because the Jem'Hadar murdered a Bajoran colony.
True. That's true.
So at this stage, neither of them really know if he's more than just a programming killing machine.
They don't.
I think Odo's take is the more Star Trek on this. Give him the chance to become something more.
Oh, absolutely. Odo is representing Star Trek.
Yeah.
Like I said, he's being Geordi in the episode with Hugh.
Yeah.
He's trying to show this kid a better way. And he's trying to just accept him as a sentient being who should be able to make his own decisions.
Right.
And he's trying to convince him that he can.
And Kira reminds me here of Miles in the Cardassians when he said, Gentle was bred out of the Cardassians a long time ago. And Keiko admonishes him for saying something very ugly.
Yeah, this is different, though, in that she says he was created in a laboratory. And she's right.
He was. But you don't know how much of that programming could be broken.
We've seen no evidence that it can be broken. He came out of the infirmary throwing punches.
Right. But
So I don't know. I'm with her. I would be exceedingly cautious. Odo has a unique perspective for all the reasons we said, and also because the kid kind of worships him because that was implanted in him in some way. So he's got an advantage that the kid is going to listen to him, at least for a while, where nobody else has that advantage.
Yeah. Oh, yes. His command structure is hard-coded with Odo at the top, so he does have an advantage. Yeah.
Well, Odo disagrees with the way Kira sees it, which we were just saying.
Yeah.
But okay, she says, give him a chance, but don't forget he's dangerous. So Odo heads back into the holosuite and finds the kid still beating up on the alien.
Good job, Odo. You've just given him actual combat training now.
Well, he ends the program, but the kid is panting and seems to want more. So they walk out onto the promenade, and he notices that everyone seems to be afraid of him.
Oh, and the one Starfleet guy who ducks and hides behind a pillar.
Yeah, that was funny. Odo says they're mostly curious, but they're also afraid.
They should be. I could kill any one of them. The kid has an interesting perspective. I'll give him that.
He's scary. Odo asks if he cares about anything other than killing, and he says no.
Oh, yeah. Odo asks, is that all you think about? Isn't there anything else you care about? I don't think so. Yeah, the kid might not have a very good perspective.
No, he has no perspective.
Odo does try to explain to the kid that there is more to life. I think what they're trying to reinforce here is he really is just programmed.
He's a killing machine.
Yeah.
With no empathy or care. Yeah, it seems to be the only thing that makes any difference to him.
Yeah.
Well, the founders created a killing machine, and they can't survive without the founders because they've created it to be addicted to this enzyme that can't be replicated.
Yeah.
They're evil. They are cold-blooded, just like Miles said.
Yeah.
Well, he gets interrupted because Sisko calls Odo. So Odo tells the kid to head back to their quarters and wait there.
Did you notice the Bajoran security guy who'd been following the two of them the whole time? And when they were talking, was standing behind just a discreet distance away, leaning on the railing, watching?
I did not notice.
I liked how Odo thinks. Clearly, he was thinking his approach would ultimately work. But it's best to have backup on scene just in case.
Yeah. Now we go to Sisko's office, and when Odo comes in, Sisko is holding his baseball and playing with it. And Odo says something's wrong.
Oh, is this a tell? Is Sisko holding the baseball mean that something's wrong or Sisko's got bad news or something? I've not noticed this before now.
I don't know. I haven't noticed it either.
I'm going to have to go and read up on this.
Well, Sisko tells Odo that someone is coming to pick up the boy in 5 hours. He apologizes, saying he did everything he could. And then suddenly the kid appears Predator style, pointing a weapon at Sisko.
Oh, yeah.
Saying, you're not sending me anywhere.
So is this Predator cloaking mechanism a natural ability?
Apparently.
Or did he go to the cargo bay and find some tech in the wreckage of the ship?
Well, we don't cover it.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's a very good question. I wondered the same thing of how was he able to do that?
Yeah.
Hey, also, he seems like he's evolved a little bit here because his hair has changed. I think it's still the same actor, but he does look a little bit different. He certainly looks angrier at this point. Well, he says he wants a runabout and to get off the station, and he's taking Odo with him because they don't belong there. Sisko looks concerned, but follows Odo's lead when he plays along with the kid and follows him out.
Yeah.
The kid's plan is to head to the Gamma Quadrant and unite with his people, but Odo says he, meaning Odo, doesn't belong in the Gamma Quadrant. He says he'll go anywhere with the kid and help him start a new life if that's what he wants. The kid says all he wants is to be with his people. He says the humanoids have filled Odo's minds with ideas.
Oh, yeah.
It's just very funny the way he said it. It was like, oh my God, you had ideas. This is a terrible thing. And then he says he doesn't know what the founders are like, but he's pretty sure they're not like Odo.
Oh, now this made me wonder, is there some kind of safety feature built into the Jem'Hadar and their programming that if a founder acts outside a set of parameters, that there's something wrong with the founder, that they can ignore them or they can rescue them, get them back to the other founders because something's gone wrong?
I don't know. I'm willing to guess it's never happened before.
Yeah.
So there is no protocol for it.
Interesting.
Well, Sisko beams in with a security team, and Odo says, let us go. I'll take him to the Gamma Quadrant and then return. He's confident the kid isn't able to harm a changeling, so he figures he'll be fine. But he's sure that if the Starfleet vessel picks him up, a lot of people will die, and maybe the kid himself.
Odo's making a pretty good prediction here.
He is.
This kid is smart.
Yep.
Has some pretty amazing abilities, and we know he'd probably escape. There would be a lot of dead Starfleet personnel.
Right. Sisko agrees, recognizing that Admiral Nechayev isn't going to like this development. No, she's not.
She's not a happy person anyway.
She's not. No, she doesn't like anything.
Yeah. She makes bad treaties. She's grumpy. Yeah.
He calls O'Brien to release the force fields and tells Odo he'll see him when he gets back. Well, the kid tells Odo that anyone who is not a Jem'Hadar is his enemy. Odo asks if that includes him, but the kid doesn't answer, and off they head to the runabout. I thought it was really interesting that he didn't answer him.
Yes. See, that's my point earlier, is he reached the limits of his programming.
Now, Sisko is recording a station log that Starfleet wasn't thrilled to lose an opportunity to study the boy, but he's happy that life on the station is returning to normal. Jake is walking around with his booby girlfriend. I mean, he's very tall, and he's just looking down at her boobs. It was just the dumbest scene.
They're kind of hard to miss.
When they're on display like that. Miles and Sisko are on the second level talking, and Miles is surprised to see Jake and Marta still together. Sisko says dinner was unexpected, and he learned some things about Jake he didn't know. And then we see Odo coming to sit with Kira at the Replimat, where she is sitting bolt upright at a table. She never slouches. She never even leans back in her chair. That woman has got the most perfect posture. I'm always amazed. But Odo sits down and he tells her she was right about the boy. And Kira doesn't say anything. And the scene ends.
Because I think that was upsetting to Odo.
It was. And what's she going to say? I told you so?
Yeah, well, nobody really wins in that situation.
Nobody wins. No, nobody's happy. Well, that is the end of the episode. So do you have any other overanalysis?
Yes, I have a few points.
Okay.
Number one, this was an episode for teenage boys.
Uh-huh.
Well, straight teenage boys.
Does it impact your enjoyment of this show to know that I'm going to react negatively to things like this as you're watching it?
No, I'm interested in what your reaction to this will be.
Okay.
Unless it's the Nagus indulging in open sexual harassment, that I see as a problem, having come from a management background, of going, oh my God, I do not want my staff doing that.
Okay. Because I do think it would bother me. I think I would be always worried about how you were going to react to something that maybe I love.
Mm-hmm.
I think it would impact me negatively. So, well, that's good. I'm glad it doesn't bother you.
Next thing,
Mm-hmm.
I think part of what is motivating Odo here is guilt.
Oh, yeah.
Sisko talked to him earlier about it's not his fault, what his people did to this kid, or the Jem'Hadar as a whole. But even then, Odo is feeling a sense of collective guilt about how they behaved.
Yeah.
And I think that's why he's also working so hard to help this kid, to break the programming, because ultimately his people are responsible for this. And it goes against Odo's own moral code.
No, I definitely agree that he is feeling some guilt, even though none of it is his fault, but still, I get that.
This is also that outsider element of Odo, of he can see how this is morally wrong. Their justifications for their awful behavior are not justifications.
Right, exactly.
They're excuses for awful behavior.
He must also be worried that this is just the beginning of this for him.
In what way, the beginning?
Well, now that he knows about the Founders and he knows about the Jem'Hadar and what they've done, he must know this isn't the only time something like this is going to come up.
Oh, what else have they done?
I thought it was really interesting at that point where he tells the kid he go anywhere with him. It's like,
yes.
We can go in any part of the galaxy we can go to. He was ready and willing to take this on as like his new mission in life.
Yeah.
And just go off with that kid. But the kid was like, I don't want to do that.
Right.
So I thought that was really interesting. So now he must realize this is not the only time something like this is going to happen, where he has to confront what his people have done.
Knowing Odo, I think you're right. That's a good point. Okay. Also.
Yeah.
So in his programming, do you think there was some sort of rescue founders code built in? Because if you notice, he wants to take Odo back with him.
Yeah.
Given that he's programmed to obey the founders and that they are superior to him, I assume that that was some kind of programmed response of, oh, you have to rescue the founders and bring them to the Jem'Hadar so they can be saved.
I assume protect the Founders is built in.
Yeah. And that was how it was manifesting itself.
Yes.
And then leading on from that, I'm thinking it kind of got broken when Odo started behaving in a particular way that, like you said, was that outside of the programming norm? Was that outside of anything that they would expect?
Yeah.
It makes me wonder how much the founders are actually programmed. The Great Link purging ideas that they don't like from other founders.
Interesting question. Yeah. I hadn't thought about it because I don't know what the Great Link really is yet. It's just a thing that brings them all together.
Yeah.
But the Great Link could be something that is programming all of them to think in a particular way. It could be an AI.
Well, she says it, that the Great Link, they share ideas and sensations and everything.
I guess in my mind, I was thinking the Great Link was when they were all linked together. They were all contributing to a thing that is the link. But my point is, what if the Great Link is actually something else? And it's an AI that is controlling them. They don't know that yet.
Oh, I like that one.
Yeah, because, AIs are evil. That's what science fiction tells us. Unless they're Wall-E. That's the only time they're not.
Oh, that's a typical attitude of a solid.
Oh, totally.
And I think my final point is, Odo has really changed. Just in the last few episodes, you see his perspective has clearly changed. He seems more confident. He seems to be finding himself. And he seems to be much more accepting of the gifts he's been given. The way he's being written is quite different.
I agree. And I also think that the people are reacting differently to him now.
Yeah.
Which is good and bad. I think they might have a little bit more fear in him because now they know where he came from and they know what his people are capable of.
Yeah.
But others, like Kira, have learned more empathy for him at this point because they see that he's evolved.
And also importantly, she saw him make the decision to leave the Founders.
To choose, yeah.
And how Lady Founder was really kind of mean to him and said, you'll be alone.
Well, she recognizes that was a really tough decision when he linked up with them.
Yeah.
She saw that positive impact that it had. So I think she's able to appreciate the sacrifice that he made.
Mm-hmm.
But she also knows that that's Odo to her.
Yeah.
Is that Odo always has this sense of right and wrong. And he decided that was wrong. And he went back with them. And so I think that's probably a little bit more of what she may have expected from him. In that moment, I think she thought he would stay.
Right. Yes. Unquestionably.
But she recognizes it makes very good sense for him to have reacted that way.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah. And I think, again, final shout out to the makeup.
Oh, makeup's tremendous. That kid is really, really good. I agree. I also thought the actor was quite good.
Yes. Well, that wraps up the analysis for me.
Yeah. Well, would you like to go to women in the future?
I am fascinated with what you have to say.
Look, this woman is 4 years older than Jake, who is a teenager. He's 16. She's 25% older than him. I find that a little disturbing at his age of 16, that we're going to just think that this is okay. It feels so off to me. If he were even just a little bit older, really worse than all of that. I mean, that can just be my own hang up, whatever. But even worse than that, this again feels like the writers are trying to convince me that something is okay because they think it's okay. And that is maybe the thing that I find the most upsetting on this show, is every time they try to convince me that their crap is okay, it's so upsetting.
Interesting.
Like that whole speech that she gives about looking down on someone because of their job. This is somebody trying to convince me that their trash views of women are okay. Like the Hooker with a Heart of Gold movies.
But they're such a Hollywood staple.
It's hard to describe how much they put women into a box that they are comfortable with, and they can just eat that, because that is awful. It is such a negative way to look at women, and you're trying to force me to look at it that way. I'm not going to look at it that way. My concern is, in the 90s, when I was younger, I would have consumed it differently. I maybe would have found it uncomfortable, but it really bothers me what this had done to other people who watched the show. That's the thing that I think always gets me. It's like, what impact did this crap have on some other woman, who was watching this show? I hate it. Do better. Outside of this nonsense, I think this episode is fine, right? There's some good things in it. I quite liked all the Odo stuff. I really like the Odo-Kira scene. I think I've told you before, I'm very concerned about where that relationship is going. But this stuff it's garbage to me, because I know how the creators of the show feel about women. And so I can't let go of that.
Well, I think it's the writers putting in a very teenage attitude of a male teenage fantasy. And that's literally what they're writing in here.
And honestly, that's okay. What's not okay... What's not okay is that little speech that she gave about how you look at people because of their jobs. But yet, it's the only job that they were willing to give her, was one where her boobs were out. And I just don't I have to like it.
There's another way of also looking at that is I question whether this is a sexual exploitation of people who are basically refugees or destitute.
Oh, jeez. It's even worse.
I worry about, certainly with Quark, that what you're seeing here is actually sexual exploitation of a refugee, extremely poor population. That you have this planet that's pretty much destitute, and you are preying on the women and girls because they are so poor. And the fact that it would be almost allowed to happen on a Federation station under Bajoran control.
It's even worse. It's distasteful.
It makes it even more distasteful.
Yeah.
And they're glossing over it. Maybe it's me reading too much into it. Why wouldn't Sisko and the rest of them be even, certainly Kira, be interested in addressing this as a potential problem? But I do think that maybe the writers intended to have Marta as a younger woman closer to Jake's age, which I think would actually be even worse for the exploitation angle.
Yeah, that's a good point. That is something that Kira should be interested in, but she's not even involved in that part of the story. It really makes very little sense for Marta to have any interest in Jake at all. That's the part to me that is so stupid. She is considerably older than him. Her world is very different. And he is so naive and childlike that it doesn't make any sense that she would even be attracted to him. It's just so broken. It's so broken. She should have more character. She would actually probably be a very interesting person. Something who would be quite interesting to write, as she has tried to survive in the same way that Kira has tried to survive. She would be quite damaged from the things that have happened to her.
See my exploitation comment earlier.
Yeah. And, oh no, I just like my little teenage boyfriend who writes poetry. It doesn't even make sense. It may have been worse, actually, if she had been attracted to Sisko as someone to protect her. That actually also would have been a very narrow vision.
That would have been even more Hollywood.
At least, thank God, Bashir wasn't hitting on her. Oh, gosh.
This has managed to nicely encapsulate a lot of negative tropes.
It's so disappointing. We've done so well. Really, we talked about this a couple times, going back to like Blood Oath. It seemed like we turned a corner, and there have been so many good episodes and so many good things to watch here. And this is very disappointing. If they had built on this, even this would be like, okay, maybe they're going to build into something with this character. But I looked and she doesn't appear again. They brought her on just to show her boobs. Go write soft porn somewhere else. I don't need it in Star Trek. It's just stupid. Anyway, how about rating? Thumbs up, thumbs down, or neutral? What is your rating?
I'm giving a thumbs up. There were good things in this episode.
Okay.
There was the story with the Jem'Hadar, a lot of progression with Odo, of seeing how his character has changed, the continuing growth of that friendship with Kira. I do like that. You also saw, interestingly, some of Julian's moral standpoint. He was also opposed to using this kid, using him as an experiment.
Yeah.
And finally, boobs on display.
That's part of your thumbs up?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
I believe you. I wouldn't care about the boobs if it wasn't for the rest of it.
Yeah.
But I don't even know what to give this episode. I agree with all the stuff you said. I liked all of the Odo stuff. I liked the Jem'Hadar kid. I like Bashir's reaction to it. I liked all the stuff with Odo. I really like the stuff with his own little apartment now, or his own quarters. I liked all of that. But I'm really struggling with this narrow vision of women and how I'm supposed to just accept that. Like how if I spent more time with a Ferengi, I would like them. Remember that?
Oh, yes.
Please stop telling me how to think of women because you don't freaking know. I liked everything else. I just can't give it a thumbs up because of how they've treated women in this episode. So I'm going to have to give it a thumbs down.
Okay.
Let's move on. Well, I will stop ranting.
/rant.
Let's close the book on season 3, episode 6. We've done so well up until now. I am very hopeful we will do better after this. So come back next week for episode 7. In the meantime, if you'd like to give us your own overanalysis of this, hey, if you got something to say, I'm here to listen to it.
We have a lot to say.
Please email us at rebingeit@gmail.com or tweet us at rebingeit. You can also check us out on talkthroughmedia.com, where you can give comments on individual episodes, and you can also listen to the other podcasts in our network.
Thanks for joining us on the Rebinge Deep Space Nine podcast.
That's it for me.
And that's it from me.